Our son was already asleep in the second bed when I heard the click. It was a Holiday Inn outside of Cleveland, family road trip. We'd been driving since 7 that morning, 2 more days to go before my brother-in-law's wedding in upstate New York. My wife Leela and I had splurged on a connecting room because Toby is 7 and doesn't sleep well when there's TV noise. So we planned to let him crash early in the second bed while we sat next door with the door propped open. I'm Sam. I write user manuals. I notice doors. It's the joke at work. The connecting door had 2 locks, the kind every hotel has. A thumb-turned deadbolt on our side, an identical one on the other room's side. Both locks have to be unlatched for the door to open. If one side is locked, the door doesn't move. If both sides are locked, nothing moves. I had locked our side at 6 o'clock that night. I have a thing about it. I check it twice. I do this in every hotel. At 9:43, by the clock on the nightstand, I heard a click from the connecting door. A soft, mechanical click. The kind you'd recognize if you've ever turned a thumb-turn lock yourself. I looked at Lila. She was reading. She hadn't heard it. I want to be specific about this. Honestly, I did not immediately think someone was opening the door. The room next to ours had been quiet all afternoon. We'd assumed it was empty. The click sounded like the lock on their side being turned. About a minute later, I heard the click again. The same direction. The same noise. I got up. I crossed the room. I checked our side. Still locked. I leaned my ear toward the door. I heard breathing. Slow, steady. Right on the other side of the wood. Not pacing. Just standing there. Lila looked up. I motioned her over. She came. She listened. She mouthed, "What?" I pointed at the connecting door. The breathing stopped. We waited maybe 30 seconds. Leela reached past me and double-checked our deadbolt. I went and got Toby's shoes and put them on the floor next to his bed. I don't know why. I think I wanted him able to leave the room if we had to leave the room. I picked up the room phone and called the front desk. A man answered. I told him there was someone in the room next to ours who I believed had just unlocked their side of the connecting door and was standing against ours. I asked him to send security. He said, "There's no guest in that room, sir. The room is unoccupied tonight." I said that there was a person in there. I said the same word twice because I needed him to hear me. He said, "Hold on." He came back maybe 2 minutes later. He said someone was on the way. While I was on hold, I watched our deadbolt. The thumb turn moved. Half a turn, then back, then half a turn again from the other side. I want you to understand what that means. The thumb turn on our side does not turn unless the deadbolt is being engaged from a key or a thumb turn on our side. The other room cannot move our thumb turn. That is the whole point of the connecting door system. It moved. I dropped the phone. I grabbed the desk chair and wedged it under the connecting door's handle. Lila lifted Toby out of bed. We pulled both of us into the hallway side of the room, away from the connecting door, and we stood there with the chair under the knob until I heard hard knocking and a voice saying, "Hotel security." Security came in. They asked questions. They went into the hallway. The hallway door of the room next to ours, which was supposed to be empty, was open. There was a man inside. He had a duffel bag. He had a lockpick set on the bed. He had a small drill case. He had 2 key cards on the dresser, one of which the security guard would later tell me was an old style of card from the same hotel brand, not active at this property, but cloned, with the data of an active key written onto it. He had been working on getting our side of the connecting door open for, the police later estimated, the better part of an hour. The room he was in had been booked under a fake name with a prepaid card. He was arrested. The charge ended up being a few counts of unlawful entry, possession of burglary tools, and unauthorized possession of a hotel security key. The local detective who took our statement told me later very quietly that the lockpick set was a specific kit that had been involved in 2 other reported entries at chain hotels in the region over the previous 8 months. Both other entries had been into rooms occupied by women traveling alone. He told me we were the first family. He told me they thought the suspect had either picked us because of a mistake about who was in the room, or had picked us deliberately because a family room next to a single woman's room would have been a softer point of entry. He didn't know. They were still working through phone records. What I think about is the thumb turn moving. For a long time after, I had to convince myself I had not made up that part. I had not. The detective explained it. The cloned card he had on the dresser was a Saflock card. The brand of lock on the connecting door is the same brand. With the right device, the right card, and the right read of the data on the door, you do not need anyone on the other side to unlock anything. We don't do connecting rooms anymore. When Toby wakes up at night now, which he still does sometimes, he asks if the door is locked. We both go, we both check. It is a thing now.
A man stood in the lobby of my hotel for 14 hours the night I stayed there. I noticed him for maybe 4 seconds the whole time. The hotel noticed him for all 14, and 3 weeks later, they called to tell me why that mattered. Client breakfast on a Tuesday, late dinner that night with the regional team, flight back to LaGuardia at 6 the next morning. Standard Road Warrior week. I'd booked the same chain hotel uptown that the firm always books because the points are decent and the breakfast is open by 5. Operations strategy for a mid-sized consulting firm, that's my work. 8 years, an average of 3 weeks a month on a plane. I want to be honest. By that point in my career, I treated hotel lobbies the way most people treat their kitchen. I walk through them. I don't look at the people in them. I don't make eye contact. I check in. I get the key. I go upstairs. That night, when I came down for dinner around 8, a man was standing near the front desk. He wasn't at the desk. He was a few feet behind the line where guests check in. Phone in his hand, like he was waiting for someone. He looked normal. Jeans, button down, the kind of man you would describe later as having no description. I walked past him to the doors. He didn't look at me. When I came back, just before midnight, he was still there. That was the part. Same spot, same posture, phone in his hand, like he hadn't moved. I walked to the elevators. I keyed my floor. I stood with my back to the wall the whole ride up, which is something I have always done in elevators since college, because my Detroit kid manners die hard. The elevator was empty. The hallway was empty. I slept maybe 4 hours. The next morning, I came down at 5:15 for coffee. The lobby was empty. He was gone. Honestly, I told myself it was nothing. A guest waiting for an Uber to the airport, a husband waiting for his wife to come down from the room. I mean, there were 100 normal versions. I checked out. I caught my flight. About 3 weeks later, I got an email from the hotel's corporate guest relations office. It was short. It said there had been a security incident at the property during my stay, and that out of an abundance of caution, they were notifying guests who had been on the property at the time, and that any guest with questions or concerns should reply to a contact at the corporate office. There was a number. No detail. I called. The woman on the line was, you could tell, reading from a script. But the script became less of a script when I described the man in the lobby. She asked me to hold. She came back. She asked if I had a few minutes. She said, the man you're describing was on our property for approximately 14 hours on the night you stayed. I said nothing. She said, he was not a guest. He had been observed by our overnight front desk attendant. They asked him twice to confirm a room. He gave a room number. The room belonged to a guest who had checked in earlier that evening. He claimed to be that guest's brother. When the attendant offered to call the room, he declined and said he would wait. I asked who the guest was. She said, I can't share that. I can confirm she was a woman traveling alone. She had checked in around 4 in the afternoon. I asked what happened. She said, he approached the elevators twice that night. The first time he turned back. The second time, around 2:45, he entered the elevator and rode to the 4th floor. He stood outside the room for several minutes. The guest had a privacy bar engaged. The lock did not register a tap. I asked again what happened. She said, he left at approximately 5 in the morning. He has not been identified. The property has reviewed all available footage with local police. The case is open. The guest who was being targeted was not aware of any of this until our security review the following day. I went quiet for a while. She said, "We're notifying you because, based on his trajectory through the lobby, he may have observed you specifically during the time you came down to the lobby that evening." I asked her what that meant. She said, "We don't know if he had picked a target before you arrived or if you were being evaluated. We're notifying anyone who came within his visual line of sight during the recorded hours." I had spent 2 evenings of my life standing 15 feet from a man in a lobby. I had thought about him for maybe 4 total seconds during the entire stay. The hotel had built a behavioral file on him over 14 hours and notified everyone he might have looked at. I switched hotels in Charlotte. I switched the brand chain entirely. I have never been able to get the line out of my head. The one she said almost like an aside. "He may have observed you specifically." I do not stand in hotel lobbies anymore. If I'm waiting for a car, I wait outside, in the porte cochere with the doorman, even if it's raining. I have stopped trusting the idea that being one of many people in a public space makes me anonymous. The man in the lobby is, as far as I know, still not identified. I'd been going to the same songwriter conference in Nashville for 9 years. Before the year, a stranger knew my room number. I'll call myself Devra. Music rights work, and conference week is the busiest stretch of my year. The conference hotel is the same hotel every year, a chain property near the convention center, and most of us repeat attendees book the same brand reflexively because the points stack and you always know where the second floor coffee is. The year this happened, I'd flown in late. I checked in just before 11 on a Sunday night. I caught maybe 40 minutes of the welcome reception that was already winding down. Then I went up. My room was on the 8th floor. End of the hallway, last door on the right. The next afternoon, between sessions, I came down to the lobby for the breakout coffee table they always set up. A man I didn't recognize was standing near it. He was wearing a conference lanyard with a name and an affiliation. I didn't read either one of them too carefully. People grab lanyards. I assumed he was a publisher rep. He said, "Devra." I said, "Hi." He said, "How's 824? That was my room number. I had told no one my room number. The conference does not publish room numbers. The hotel does not publish room numbers. I had not even told my paralegal because she was back in the Nashville office handling intake. I want to say I had the presence of mind to react well. I did not. I made a face that I am sure he read. I said something like, "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" He smiled. He said, "We met at the bar last year." I did not go to the bar last year. I was at home with a sinus infection the entire conference week. I had emailed the chair to apologize the day before the first session. He should not have met me last year. He did not know me. The thing is, this is Nashville, which means at a music conference, you absolutely will run into people who think they remember you from somewhere. The whole industry runs on the friction of, "Wait, were you at South by Southwest in 2019? I think so, yeah. It is a town built on the assumption that if you don't remember someone, the failure is yours. So, honestly, I almost laughed it off. I almost said, "Right, of course." I caught myself. I said, "I have to get back to a panel." I walked past him. I went up to my room. I locked the door. I called the front desk. I told the front desk that a man at the breakout coffee had just told me my room number, and that I had not given my room number to anyone. I asked them to confirm whether anyone had requested my room number from the front desk. The woman who took the call paused. She said, "Let me check with my manager. I'll call you back." I did not let go of the phone after she hung up. I held it in my hand. I think I was waiting for her to call back. She didn't call back. She came up. She knocked on my door, identified herself, and asked me to step into the hallway so we could speak in the stairwell, which is, I now know, what they do when the conversation is one they don't want overheard. She told me. A front desk associate from the overnight shift, the one who had checked me in the night before, had been called by a man claiming to be my fiancé that morning. The man said he wanted to surprise me with breakfast in the room. He gave a name, a description, and the airline I had flown in on, all of which were accurate. The associate had given him my room number. I do not have a fiancé. I was not engaged. I was, at that moment in my life, very deliberately single. I asked the manager who the associate was. She told me the associate had been pulled off the floor. She told me they were reviewing the call. She told me the associate had been with the brand for 11 months and had no prior incidents. I asked if she had a guess. She paused for a long time. She said, "Off the record." He sounded credible to her. He used your full name. He knew you'd flown in on Delta. He knew you had a single reservation. He said you'd told him about the conference. He used the words, "my Devra," which she said sounded affectionate enough that she lowered her guard. I left the conference that afternoon. I drove home. I lived 20 minutes from the hotel. I sat at my kitchen table for about 2 hours, not doing anything. Then I called a friend of mine who works at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. He was not a music attorney. He was a friend from law school. He drove over. We pieced it together that night. The man at the coffee table matched. I would later learn. A description an associate at a different hotel in town had filed a complaint about earlier that year. He had used similar phrasing. Same fiancé claim. Same use of a full name. He had not, at that hotel, gotten the room number because the associate had asked him to call the room and let her transfer it, which is the policy that was supposed to be in place at every property of that brand, and which was, in fact, the policy at my property too. The associate at my hotel had not followed the policy. She lost her job. The brand took the complaint seriously, to their credit. They made changes. The front desk now requires a second factor at every property before releasing any guest information to anyone, no matter how plausible the relationship sounds. The man at the coffee table was identified, eventually, through other complaints. He was charged with criminal trespass and stalking. He was, the prosecutor told me, working through a list of attendees at multiple industry events. He was not someone I knew. He was not someone anyone I knew. He had simply, the prosecutor said, picked names off the conference website and built dossiers. He showed me mine. A single printed page. My name and my firm and the airline and the words "single reservation." All of it circled in the same blue ink. I have a different conference hotel now. I tell every junior attorney I mentor the same thing. Never give your full name to anyone you don't already know is at the conference. Never confirm, even casually, what airline you flew. Never let anyone at any front desk hand out your room number without making the caller speak to you first. This is now a thing I say out loud, often. I don't know if anyone listens. The associate who lost her job at my hotel was 23 years old. I think about her too. I woke up because I felt someone exhale near my ear. I'm Kira. I sell medical imaging equipment to regional hospital chains. I am, in any given calendar year, in a hotel room more nights than I am in my own bed. I have a chain I prefer. They are everywhere. Their beds are firm. The points convert one-to-one with my airline. I have stayed in their rooms maybe 800 times. The hotel I woke up in that night was a property off Interstate 40 in central Arkansas. I had driven down from a sales call in Springfield, Missouri, and was supposed to be in Little Rock in the morning. I'd checked in around 11. The hotel was maybe a third full, mostly truckers, from the look of the parking lot. I want to back up to the lobby. I want to tell you what I noticed and didn't act on. When I checked in, the night clerk swiped my card and handed me 2 keys, the way they always do, the way I always tell them I only need one. I told him one. He laughed, said sorry, took one back. He put it in a drawer next to him. I noted that the drawer was open. There were 2 other key cards in it, not in sleeves. One was sticking up against the rail. The lobby smelled, very faintly, like cigarettes. The hotel was no smoking. When I got in the elevator, a man was waiting in it. He was already in the elevator when the doors opened. He had no luggage. He was not pressing any buttons. He had not gotten on after the lobby. He was already there. He nodded. I nodded. I pressed 3. He did not press anything. The elevator went up. He did not get off on 3. He did not get off on 4. I do not know what floor he got off on because I got off on 3. I did everything right. I did. I want to make this part very clear. I closed my room door. I engaged the deadbolt. I engaged the privacy bar. I locked the chain. I checked the connecting door. There was no connecting door. I checked the bathroom. I checked the closet. I went to bed. I woke up at 3:12 in the morning to a breath, deliberate and quiet, very close to my left ear. I did not move. Honestly, I do not know how I did this. I mean, I think it was my body knowing before my brain knew. I kept my eyes closed. I kept my breathing slow. I lay completely still. Whoever was in the room was, I could tell, leaning over me, not touching, just looking. After what I think was maybe 2 minutes, but could have been 30 seconds, he stood up. I heard the carpet creak by my bed. I heard him walk slowly toward the door. I heard him open the door, push it open, slip through, and pull it shut from the outside. The deadbolt was still engaged. I opened my eyes. The privacy bar was on the floor in front of the door, broken at the hinge. The chain was hanging loose. The deadbolt was, somehow, still extended. I called the front desk. I did not call from the room phone. I called from my cell. I told the woman on the line that someone had been in my room and had left. She said, "Ma'am, are you sure?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Is the door open?" I said, "No." She said, "Then I'm sorry. I don't understand." I told her to send security. She did. They came up. They saw the privacy bar broken. They saw the chain. They saw the deadbolt extended. They saw my face. They went into the hallway. They walked it. They walked back. I asked who I needed to talk to get the police. The security guard, who I would later learn had been a Pulaski County deputy for 11 years before he took the hotel job, said, "Ma'am, yes, right now." The soft lock unlock device was not, at that time, public knowledge. The story did not break, publicly, for about another month. The researchers who found the vulnerability sat on it while the brand was working on a patch. When the news did break, I was lying on my couch at home, 3 weeks after Arkansas, and I read it, and the entire bottom of me dropped out. The patch had not yet reached the hotel I had stayed in. The investigator who took my case, who was very kind and very tired, told me that on the night of my stay, there had been, in the parking lot of that property, 2 vehicles that had no business being there. One was a pickup truck registered to a man from out of state. The other was a Chevy sedan registered to no one specifically, with a plate that came back to a shell company. Both had been in the lot for about 6 hours. Both left within 10 minutes of each other. He told me the cigarette smell in the lobby was likely the man in the elevator. He had been smoking outside the entrance for, the lobby camera showed, almost 40 minutes before he came in. He had been waiting. He told me there was no way to know if the man in my room was the man in the elevator. The cameras on my floor were the kind of cameras that were on and recording, but did not actually save footage unless someone pulled the file within 48 hours, and no one had thought to pull it. He told me they were working on it. I want to tell you that they caught him. I cannot tell you that. They have not caught him. The case file has my report in it. The case file has photographs of the broken privacy bar. The case file has a small bullet point under evidence that lists potential SAFLOC intrusion. That is it. I sold my Phoenix house 6 months after Arkansas. I bought a smaller one closer to my parents. I changed the chain I stay at when I travel. I sleep in motels now. Old-style motels. The kind where the door has a real key and a real chain, and you can put a chair under the doorknob if you want to. I am still in hotels 200 nights a year. I do my job. I sit on the bed and I open the laptop and I take calls. But there's a thing. Every night, before I close my eyes, I lift the privacy bar with my hand and I check that it isn't on its hinge. I check that the latch hasn't been seated wrong. I check the deadbolt. I check the chain. I do this in every room, in every brand, in every town. The breath. That's the only part I cannot fix. I felt him exhale. I felt it. I will feel it for the rest of my life.